I'm really excited to do this video today because I think this video might be somewhat controversial, not in like a drama way, but we are going to be covering all of the Generation 3 officers. More specifically, we are going to be talking about what I feel like are the best Generation 3 officers in Warpath. I'm going to give you guys an overview of every single officer that is tagged as a Generation 3 officer, and then I'm going to give you guys my top picks from that generation. Sorry for the quick interruption, but I wanted to add, I went back and recorded this and wanted to plug this into the video. It took me a while to record and edit it, so I didn't want to redo everything, but I did want to provide a little clarification and apologize for my mistake on the Generation 3 officer video. So as I do before all of my videos, I gather all of the information, I structure it, and then I go in and actually shoot the video. And when I was going down the list and writing all of the Generation 3 officer names down so that way I knew who all was included on that Generation 3 list, I wrote down Lady Justice twice instead of Lady Liberty. And so I didn't have Lady Liberty as a part of the video when I did the original recording, and she was not included on the top officer lists, which is not correct. She absolutely is one of the best officers, not only in the game in general, but probably the best overall Generation 3 officer. I just didn't have her on the list because I goofed up, had Lady Justice down twice. I don't know why I did that. Like I said, it was completely my fault, but I just wanted to provide a little clarification on the front end. You can light me up in the comments if you want, but just know that Lady Liberty is absolutely on the list of top officers for Generation 3 and just in general. I just messed up on the name. So apologies in advance, but enjoy the video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back. I hope you are all doing well. I hope life is going good. I'm really excited for this video, and the reason I said it was going to be a little bit potentially controversial is because in previous videos we have covered all of the Generation 1 and 2 officers, and I have given you all my ranking and which officers from each of those respective generations I think were the best. And we're going to do the same for Generation 3. However, currently in Warpath, the Generation 3 officers have more overall officers in Generation 3 than any other generation combined. And to say there is a bunch of really high-end, quality, top-of-the-line officers in Generation 3 would be an understatement. So figuring out and picking which ones are the best out of the entire Generation 3 officer lineup, it's a pretty tough task, but I've made my choices, and some of you are going to definitely agree with some of my picks because there are some just kind of no-brainers on the list, of course, and then there are some where you could make a case that maybe they should be on the list, or maybe there should be a different officer that I didn't include on the list instead. And I definitely want to get everybody's thoughts and opinions in the comments on that. Before we get started though, as always, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like this in the future, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you are not already so you don't miss any future uploads. Let's try to get this video to at least 150 likes. So here's what we're going to do first. I made a list of all of the Generation 3 officers. That includes both Ground Force and Air Force. We're going to talk about I'm going to list every single one of the officers that are a part of the Generation 3 group. And then we are going to go into the rankings, or what I deem as the best of the Generation 3 officers. So going down the list in absolutely no particular order, we have got Rapier, Argent Flame, Eye of Providence, Vox, Thorn Countess, Lady Justice, Professor Payne, Svelin, Whipcracker, Lonesome Star, Mystero, Lady Justice, Lord of Order, Everbloom, Bladewing, Rising Star, Nagarani, Inferno, and last but not least, Darkwing. So that is 19 total Generation 3 officers, again, including both Ground Force and Air Force, and that is currently the most amount of officers in a single generation in Warpath. And like I said, there is no shortage whatsoever of high quality officers within the Generation 3 umbrella. So now let's actually jump in and take a look at the officers and go through the ones that I think are the best of the best out of the Generation 3 lineup. I have picked 7 total officers that I think are the best of the best. The first one being Rapier. He is one of the last Generation 3 officers to be added to this generation specifically. Right after Rapier came into the game, they started introducing the new Generation 4 officers. But as we all know, Rapier, I think is how you properly pronounce it. I've always botched his name. But he is a monster. He goes really well. He's especially used on the light. Like, everybody kind of gravitates towards him for the light tank, but he does very, very well on things like a helicopter and a main battle tank too. He is just an all-around beast, especially when it comes to the battlefield. He is a high damage output officer. He's got critical strike skills going on there, especially when you pair the right other officer skills to the officer skill training system here. I mean, you can get really, really devastating amounts of damage out of this guy. It's insane. It's truly insane. Just for an example here, my skill number 1 paired with him, 15% chance of landing a critical strike rate, dealing 150% extra damage. And then Thorn Countess's skill increases the damage of this officer's troop by 20%. So his baseline skills are just loaded with damage on top of those additional skills that I've paired with him. And I know a lot of other people at this point pair those same skills or very similar skills on him if they have him and use him. And he's just a freaking monster, plain and simple. Next up on the list is going to be Argent Flame. He's been around for what seems like forever. He's been around, honestly, for such a long time. I'm kind of surprised he's even a Generation 3 officer, to be perfectly fair. But he is a monster, especially when garrisoned in your base. He does really, really well as the lead officer because when he is the lead officer or the captain, he increases the damage output of his secondary or of his aid officer. And he is just a massive, massive advantage to have, again, especially on base defense. And he does really well in the open field, but base defense, he is a must-have. Next up is going to be Thorn Countess. Now, I was a little bit I probably wouldn't have put her on the list if Uncle Ivankov had not been added to the game. Uncle Ivankov has really changed a lot and really kept Thorn Countess relevant, which is part of the reason she made it on this list. But even just Thorn Countess as a standalone officer is pretty good. She's obviously going to have a shield coefficient. She increases the damage. Again, you saw me using it on Rapier. Increases the damage by 20%. That's a pretty high amount. A lot of the officer damage skills that you can use in this game are all about 15%. So having a 20%, there's only a handful of officers that offer a 20% damage. She's one of them, which is a big asset. She also pairs really well with Svelin. Svelin is a good officer with her on something like a super heavy or a main battle tank, something you are going to be tanking a base, for example, with. That is going to be a good pairing. Like I said, Uncle Ivankov, Thorn Countess is the best pairing. Svelin, Thorn Countess is kind of the next pairing in line that makes a lot of sense there. She's kind of just lingered around. She's not just to blow your mind in any kind of sense, but she does really well. She's got some base benefit too with her shield coefficient. So she just kind of continued to make her way into everybody's lineup. So that is how she has made it on this list. Next up on the list is going to be Professor Payne. Now, I went back and forth if I wanted to include any exclusive lounge officer on this list, and I opted for yes simply because he is still a Generation 3 officer, and I didn't want to exclude any potential exclusive lounge officers just because they're an exclusive lounge officer. So he made my list because he has a really solid lineup of skills. He was one of the earlier exclusive lounge officers added into the game, but he is just a monster. I mean, yes, you could say the same for pretty much all of the exclusive lounge officers. I mean, you're paying a pretty high price for these officers, so you better be getting a lot of value for that money. So you kind of expect that amount of return, but he does just really, really well. Now, I'm going to kind of throw this out there and put that I didn't add like Lord of Order, which is another exclusive lounge officer. I did not add him to this list. He is still very good, but more than one of his skills, there are other comparable skills that are offered by completely free-to-play officers out there, so that is why he didn't make this list. But for example, Professor Payne's 4th skill increases the skill damage of all officers in this troop by 30%. So it doesn't matter what troop type, it doesn't matter what officer, getting that increased skill damage for all officers, especially by 30%, is massive. The next officer on the list is Everbloom. Now, many of you know, especially if you followed the channel for any amount of time, I am not an infantry player. I don't even own an infantry unit. I've invested in no infantry tech, but infantry has gotten a lot more popular in really about the last 6, maybe 9-ish months. It's really kind of exploded onto the scene. Infantry for the better part of 2 years was completely irrelevant. Literally nobody used it. It's gotten a lot more popular. They've started to add a lot more high profile, high value infantry specific officers. And Everbloom is arguably the best infantry specific officer currently in Warpath. And so while I don't personally use infantry and I don't personally have any investment into Everbloom, I do see the value based on what I've seen just in fighting in general, and also from what I've talked to other people about. She's hands down a must-have if you are running infantry of any kind. Now, jumping over to Air Force, Bladewing is going to be the next officer on the list. And I chose Bladewing because he is kind of just the most versatile, if you will, fighter-specific officer in Warpath that's not exclusive lounge, right? You can pair Bladewing really well with Polar Phantom. You can pair him very well with Nagarani. You can pair him well with pretty much anybody, and he does an extremely good job. He offers just as a standalone officer, he offers some really, really good skills. The ability that he's got to slow down other enemy aircraft is super helpful. If you can hit them with, or if you can target them, slow them down, you're going to get additional kills you otherwise probably would not. And so that value add alone is what puts him on my list. And then last but not least is Darkwing, another exclusive lounge officer. As you can see, I have not unlocked him, and I'm probably not going to worry about unlocking him for a while. I have invested in the past heavily into Air Force. I've kind of backed off and started really going all in on my ground force. Maybe I make my way, to investing in him at some point in time. That is not right now, but he is just hands down, point blank, not even a discussion, the single best fighter officer in Warpath. Hands down, better than any other option, including Bladewing. Bladewing is a free-to-play officer, so that's how he's made his way onto the list because of how versatile he is as an officer and how good he is just as a standalone officer. Darkwing is just the best of the best, and that's just how it is. It's plain and simple. So keeping all of that in mind, the 7 officers that I have added to this list, or that I deem are the top 7 officers out of all of the Generation 3 officers. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you disagree, tell me who you disagree with and who you would put in their place and why. I'm very curious to see and hear what you all have to say and what you think. If you made it this far into the video, if you have got access to Discord and are not already in our community Discord server, the link to that is going to be in the description of the video. Click on that link. It'll take you right into the community Discord server. Whether you are a new player and want to learn, want to get to know other people, whether you're a veteran player and just want to come hang out, chat, talk, meet new people in the community, doesn't matter. Absolutely everybody is welcome. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video today. We'll see you on the next one.